Chancellor of Murang'A University of Technology, and the Vice Chancellor, Professor Nyariki, and the entire fraternity of Murang'A University of Technology, our PS Higher Education, Balozi Simon, all graduates and guests, good morning. You know, Prof, the reason why I came here with this booklet is because I've been going through some of the officers of the university on, I think, page 3, and I noted a few things, which I have also noted during your introduction of guests, that in this gathering I have very good close friends. One, the Deputy Vice Chancellor who was leading the other program is a spouse of my former colleague. And probably no wonder he was handling microphone in a manner to suggest that being a politician can be transferable. The other issue is that the DVC Finance, Madam Professor Beatrice Mugendi, is a spouse to my other good friend, who is actually also here, Professor Mugendi of Ebi University. I have also seen during the introduction that Professor Muluvi, when you invited him to come to Murang'A University, he could not resist the temptation to come to an area represented by his former student. I know graduations, you should not command people to start, but I would request Professor Muluvi and Professor Mugendi kindly to stand up. These two gentlemen, professors, were both DVCs in KU when I was a student leader and a student of KU. And one thing that is interesting, because I have looked at them, is that I think when you are conferred to being a professor, I think you don't age fast. Because these two men would pass as young men. But thank you very much, professors. I had to do that because that is my basis. I was in KU, and they mentored me, especially when I was a student leader. I want to make just a few remarks in a very easy manner, not a speech manner. And I say so because sometimes when we come to such a gathering, and especially when you are robed, we can be very straitjacket, and therefore only the event will pass, but majority of the things that may end up being done here may not be remembered. So I would request that we ease up, because my speech also is not very official, so that we are not too much straitjacket. One, I want to congratulate all the graduates of Murang'A University of Technology, those who are here physically, and those who are following us in other channels. I want to say a big congratulations. Congratulations too to the gentleman who made a speech here. I think being the best graduate, I also want to congratulate you. There are more better qualified people to talk about academics, because I only hold one degree, and therefore I will not attempt to guide anyone in regards to education. But I want to say something about beyond education, because once you leave this university, which is a very good university, you go out there, and many times you conduct interviews in whichever forums or fora, and you realize that majority of Kenyans are highly qualified. Kenya has got a very good labor force, technically qualified. But I want us to also think as we graduate that when you move out of Murang'A University of Technology and others are moving out of their respective universities, you meet there in the labor pool, and therefore then, when you are qualified academically, something else has to start in the gap. And that is what I would really request, that as we celebrate today, that it is also a challenge. And number one, beyond the papers that we have gotten and the knowledge, there are some other things that we are not taught here, which I have seen are very vital, not just in leadership, in terms of being a politician, but also in leadership in academia, leadership in farming, leadership in whichever other quarter. And number one of those is something called emotional intelligence. That you can study and have papers, but you also need to have some humanity in you that gives you some several miles ahead of others. Cultivate emotional intelligence. There is no time to exemplify, but you can read books about that, and I am sure it will make you different from the other people who are graduating. Number two is character. Character, when the Vice Chancellor, Professor Nyariki, is looking forward to promoting anyone, whereas he may look as the Vice Chancellor at the academic qualifications, character comes in very handy. This may sound as a banality, something we have heard from nursery school. But I want to reinforce and buttress that some of these issues may seem very easy. Being honest at work, being hardworking in whatever you do, they are very vital. Number three is to have also some specific competencies. Beyond what you study, when you go in a work environment, what else can you offer, even beyond your line of training and your line of being hired? Then, I want to give you a small story I was given. I met some graduates from Keharu, recent graduated graduates from Keharu, just the other day. And I shared this story with them, which I would want to share with my brothers and sisters who are graduating today. When I was in KU first year, and I hope Professor Muluvi and Professor Mugendi will not hear what their student was doing, I looked for an internship. I don't know whether to call it internship because it was neither paid nor was there any technical training I was getting. So I went to the Ministry of Trade in Kenya at Teleposta in Nairobi. I was a first year. I had joined KU and I was determined. When I joined KU, nimetoka Murang'A, nimeenda Nairobi. Na nikasema hii ni tikiti ya one way. Nikasema even during my long holidays, I'm not going to come to Gishagi. So I looked for an internship during my long holiday in the Ministry of Trade. And around that time, because it was unpaid, I decided to look for some side hustle to get some fare to work or to the internship. So I went to our former MP. He's my friend Genya Kariuki. I was going there to show him how I'm a very influential student leader and therefore can rely on me politically. But on the side, I thought that would earn me something to expend in terms of fare. So I went to his office, and unfortunately he was in a meeting, and the secretary, because I was carrying an envelope, like many of you graduates, told me that you can leave your CV. I wasn't going to look for a job. I was going to look for some money from a politician who is my former MP. And when they told me to leave the CV, I left because I had the CV. Like many of us who graduate, a CV is your close companion. So I left the CV and he called me some few days after. He told me, Kijana, I see you requested for an opportunity. I said yes. Then I went, we talked. He asked me, when do you want to report or to start work? I told him now. So I started. So we became close. I'm sharing this wisdom because it has been of help. He told me a few things. One, most of the time, maybe during our age, not maybe these people who are graduating today, when you leave the countryside and you go to the city, most likely you are hosted by a relative. So he told me, most of the time you become a bother with time because you are doing nothing, you are helping nothing, and you are being fed, and yuko tu hapo. He told me that one thing you need to do when you are hosted, do some chores there to make yourself relevant. To cut this long story short, because I don't want to give a very long story, he shared one thing that is related to what I said. When you get a job and you want a pay rise and you want some promotion, the best way is not to ask for it. The best way is to earn it and make yourself indispensable. When you work in my office, for example, and I notice that with your competencies, with your character, with how you do your work, that you are indispensable, you don't need to tell me to add you any salary. You only need to come, show up, and insinuate that you have gotten a better opportunity elsewhere. And immediately you run your promotion and your salary. So as we graduate today, if you get an opportunity anywhere to work, and you can go for a week without anyone noticing that you are absent, my friend, resign because you have no work to do in that organization. Make yourself indispensable because that is the best way to create your niche. Lastly, and to create, by the way, just to, because I think it's an important point, one way of making yourself indispensable, of course, is to work hard, do extra than your fair share. And I could have given you another story in brief. When I went to Mheshimiwa Genye's place and I got a job in a stockbroking firm by then. And because I was in KU, now after we went back after a long holiday and I continued working, you know, you people, you know KU where it is. And the traffic jam of Thika Road then, before the superhighway. So I used to wake up very early and catch the Githurai buses. We were paying a little less during the off-peak. So I used to wake up early, go off-peak, get to work very early. And then in the evening, I could leave slightly after everyone else to be also off-peak, to pay less fare. So this was insinuated in the company as hard work. Because I could go early and leave latest. So probably you can copy that, only that then you actually need to do the actual work. So, lastly, from where we sit, and I am very privileged to serve in the Parliament of Kenya, and also as the Budget and Appropriations Committee Chairman. And therefore, I am private to the things we are doing in terms of the economy of our country. And I want to really thank Murang'A University of Technology for churning out relevant graduates. Even your name suggests, technology cannot be here just for the sake of a name, because we are in that era. Unfortunately, there is something that is wrong with our country, which I am supposing, I am throwing this challenge to the graduates to try and look for this solution. Kenya is a deficit country in all respectives. When we make our budget, for example, this year, our budget is 3.3 trillion. We have a deficit of 860 billion. No one knows where this money is coming from. We can only borrow, both domestically and foreign. There is another deficit, which is trade deficit. We, of course, import much more than we export. In manufacturing alone, manufacturing accounts for half of our imports, which is around 1 trillion Kenya shillings. The only exports we do from manufacturing aggregate is around 208 billion Kenya shillings, leaving a deficit of close to 800 billion again. If you see those two deficits, they correlate. You know, there are levels of industrialization and growth from agrarian coming all the way to the fourth industrial revolution that we are in. Kenya's demand and Kenya's growth of the economy has been driven by three things in the past, and I'm doing it briefly. One is public consumption. Number two is public investments, roads, etc. And number three is private consumption. Now, that would have been better if this consumption, and especially private consumption, leads to some internal investments to bridge this enlarged gap of demand. What am I trying to say? Kenya is agrarian in terms of production, but you are fourth industrial in terms of consumption. I throw this challenge to those of us graduating today, that your role is not just to look for a job. It is to know that there is a challenge, and especially opportunities in manufacturing. Take up the reins of those opportunities. Become business creators. Become employers. And become wealthier and richer. May God bless you. Congratulations.